Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of SBJ Live. I'm Dan Kaufman with Sports Business Journal. This is part of our three-part series on how the sports industry uses artificial intelligence. This is part one. We're focusing today on AI-powered fan experiences and franchise operations. We have two more parts to this three-part series. Part two is in April and part three is in June. Make sure that you're registering for those as well. We will drop a link in the chat here on the right-hand side that will drive you to a location where you can register for those two other episodes if you have not already done so. Thank you for being here. As people are joining, I am going to give a few instructions and then I'll get right to our panelists so we can get going. The instructions are these, and again, I apologize if you've heard this already, if you've attended an SBJ Live, but here's what they are. We want your engagement and interaction. What does that mean? Don't sit back and be passive. It means I want to see people messaging in the chat, as I see already people are doing. So tell us who you are and where you're coming from and put it in the chat. And if you see people who are who you know or who you want to get to know, feel free to message them in the chat. Okay, we encourage that. That's part one of how we want your engagement. Part two of how we want your engagement is we want you to be clicking on the questions tab, which is right next to the chat tab at the lower right-hand side for me. And that's where we want you to put your questions. We don't have a specific Q&A period for SBJ Lives. We get to your questions throughout this session. So don't wait till the end. Put your questions in whenever they pop into your head. And you can upvote questions that come through. If you see them and you want to make sure we get to them, upvote the questions. Okay? We're going to go for about 40 to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how popular this is. We have got people joining us from all over the world. This is a record for an SBJ Live. Nearly 600 people have registered for this episode. So thank you so much for being here. We will do our best. I assure you of that. I'm going to flip it to each panelist to give I'm going to flip it to each panelist to give all of us about 30 seconds to a minute of an intro, and then we'll get right started. And I'll go in alphabetical order by last name. Sumit.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody, for having us here. Sumit Arora. I'm with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and I help oversee our business strategy, our business analytics, including our AI practice, as well as digital and esports. And excited to be here and be part of this talk.
Thank you, Sumit. Joining us from Toronto. Bashad.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bashad. I'm leading product tech and AI for Sportradar. I joined Sportradar 10 months ago. Prior to that, I was 18 years at Google. In the last many years of that, I was working on AI products. Google Assistant, Google Lens are two of the products that I have started at Google. Very happy to be here.
Thank you, Bashad. Bashad joining us from Zurich. Charlie.
Hey, Charlie Ebersol. I'm the CEO of Infinite Athlete. I'm unequivocally the least qualified and dumbest on this call, but what I lack in intelligence, I more than make up for in opinions and being loud. So hopefully that'll make up for my shortcomings.
Charlie, you're very modest. I'm going to battle you for the least intelligent person on the panel. So we'll let Bashad and Sumit fight it out for the brightest. Thank you all for being here. To the audience, once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for messaging in the chat and letting us know that you're here. Put your questions in this questions tab. Don't wait till the end. Upvote the questions you want. Let's go ahead and get started. We got to start with some background, guys. We talked about this on the prep call. I think that the AI buzzword is out there in every piece of marketing copy that we could actually ever dream of. But let's make sure that we understand what we're actually talking about here so we can actually get to a point where we can identify actual real uses of artificial intelligence that are being done effectively within the sports industry so that you, audience members, can take those back and hopefully apply them. So for some background, I'm going to flip it to Bashad. Bashad, tell us, if you can, and this is how I'm going to phrase it, but you can come back with an answer that might be slightly different. I'm going to phrase it this way. Tell us the differences between what I would think of as traditional artificial intelligence, which has been with us for some time, machine learning, and then generative artificial intelligence, which is all the buzz and the rage since ChatGPT came on the scene.
No, of course, and it's an important question because we talk a lot about AI, but of course, AI has been around for a very long time, as you mentioned. I think the machine learning is actually AI is about machines who are making machines smart and do smart things, and machine learning is the most classical approach of doing AI. And the traditional AI or traditional machine learning, the way it works is that you try to give data and examples and ask a machine to learn from that data to do something. A simple example would be, let's say that you want to give a picture, you want to know whether this picture is a cat or not. For that, you would give lots of pictures of cats and lots of pictures which is not cat, and then you label them. You say that these are all cats, these are all non-cats. And then the model, the machine learning model, tries to find patterns to separate those two. So basically, lots of data given to build a cat yes or no classifier. And then there's a new round of AI which started a few years ago. ChatGPT was the beginning of this big new wave, which is called generative AI. And generative AI, the difference with that previous traditional AI is that there are so-called foundational models. So we say that instead of training for these models for one problem, let's go and say, imagine that you ask a model to go and read everything which is out there. Go and read all of the internet. Go and watch all of the videos. Go and listen to all of the music. Go and see all of the pictures. And then practice. And practice means that repeatedly, drop parts of them, and everything that you read, try to learn it more and more and more. And now this thing is called foundational model. This is what we call GPT-3, 4, all of these are different types of foundational models, right? And then they are capable of solving lots of problems. They can know, because they have read everything, they should know what is a cat and what is not. But they can also write poems, but they can also, classify, some of the medical types of, complex questions, and they can do maths and so on. It's so that's basically the high level picture here. And I think what is different is before you needed to go and hire machine learning experts to build models for one problem. Now you have all these large language models out there, these foundational models, which is there for you to either use it as a consumer like ChatGPT, or to build with it. And I think that's and the barrier is much lower. Now you don't need to again train classifiers. You use these models and make applications out of it. And I think that's a big thing we changed in the past 2 years. And of course, we're seeing across all the industries lots of different use cases, whether it's from trying to do content creation is something which we have seen a lot, from the writing text or generating videos and so on. These are things which have not been possible before, and now possible only in the last really 2 years. To the more traditional use cases, such as automating, let's say, call centers and chatbots, and improving the customer experiences and so on. So ranges of application, we're seeing it across all the industries, I would say.
Thank you, Bashad. Charlie, I'm going to flip it to you. In our prep call, you had a really good line of thought on some things that are like fundamentally important for any organization to do before they can even think about having some sort of proprietary AI model. Talk us through that. Data was the word that you used.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I really like that description of AI. My answer to that question would have been, it's what you find and replace NFT when you're raising money around sports businesses. You just now say AI instead of NFT. And prior, it was Web3, as Sumit was to point out earlier. I think the biggest challenge that people have in understanding impact of AI is the fact that AI fundamentally requires structured data, that it has to be coherent in how the data is created. And whether you think it is a good idea or a bad idea in how the sports leagues and teams have handled their data for the last 30 years, it's, first of all, it's not structured. So there is very incoherent data across all of these places. And then it was outsourced so dramatically to so many different partners that the biggest challenge that you're seeing in terms of sports is you're hearing a lot about AI, but one of the reasons it's so limited is because people are just trying to create these data lakes with coherent data in them that can do things. I mean, it is an interesting, I said it on the prep call, it's a very interesting group that this is the group, because I think Sportradar is uniquely positioned, having structured so much data for so many years across so many sports leagues, that they are probably among, if not the best positions to actually build substantial AI that can do things that are actually productive and additive. And at the same time, MLSE, which again also is unique, is because they own across multiple sports leagues, and they have multiple venues, and they have multiple touch points with their users on the fan side. They are uniquely positioned, similar to how Kroenke is positioned, similar to how a handful of these ownership groups, where they're able to go across those positions. I think what's interesting is that the scary part for sports leagues should be that they've had 60 years, 70 years, 80 years of a licensing model where they go out and they say, we're going to sell you the right to air our video for 4 years. And then at the end of 4 years, we're going to massively increase the cost. We're going to run a huge process, and you're going to have to pay a ton of money to stay in the business. This is the first time where that business model does not work. You can't go to Google and say, we're going to sell you the ability to be our AI partner. And then in 4 years, we're going to take all that back and then go forward, because to Bashad's point, once they put it into the model, like the inputs are educating the nodes, and then all of a sudden you've got this sort of platform. And I think that the learning curve, in many respects, the learning curve around AI is much steeper relative to the sports leagues and the teams, because all of their traditional business models are out the window, and they have empowered partners like Radar, as an example. They've empowered partners unintentionally with all of this data access that they've been able to build, that even if they say, oh, that's proprietary, it's like, it's somewhat irrelevant, because once it's in the AGI or AI models, it's not like you can be like, oh, we got to pull this out. Like, once you've educated the brain, it's no longer knowledge, it's wisdom. And I think that's a really difficult concept to explain to people who look at the Pete Rozelle, I'm just going to slice the ham as thin as possible and start calling it prosciutto and selling it for ridiculous prices. It's like, you can't, in this situation, you can't feed people prosciutto and then be like, okay, well, I need it back in its original form so I can resell it.
A question popped into my head, and this is for you, Charlie, or other folks jump in. But I think you said something to the effect of, and correct me if I'm wrong, something to the effect of that the sports industry might be behind a little bit in the AI race. Is that fair to say? And if so, what's the reasoning for that? And I think you said it, but I want to really drill down on it. And two, are there industries that are farther ahead, and why are they farther ahead? Automotive, whatever it might be, healthcare. Charlie, you want to tackle that? Sumit?
I want to hand it off to those. I'd like to hand it off to my panelists, because to co-panelists, because I think they're in the model. I'll just speak from, here's my personal experience.
Yeah.
We fundamentally build infrastructure so that people can build AI on top of it. That's my business. That's my core business.
Yeah.
Even in the last 3 months in dealing with the leagues, we've looked at our business and been like, there are whole segments of our business now that are profitable parts of our business that we basically no longer need, because once the infrastructure is in place, all of these sort of service businesses that are over here become irrelevant, because all they were doing was data inputs so that things made sense. Like, you have, an incredible technology like Sony Hawkeye, and then you have a LiDAR system. Once you tell those two things how to work together in some format where AI can live on top of it, you no longer need all of the processing of that data, because now you've made the AI smart. Where I think the sports business is in a really interesting position is, the sports business is a great business if you're on the league side, for the most part. If you're one of the major leagues, if you're the NFL, you've got a salary cap, you've got a minimum spend, you've got an amount of money that you're guaranteed for 10 years coming in from media, and then you have all these ancillary businesses that are coming in. And that's sort of like a traditional business. And so when someone comes in and says, hey, we can make this more efficient, we can create more money, it's like, our margins are so big, it's hard for us to justify spending real time and effort in doing this. Other businesses like finance, where the margin really matters, where it's like your profit comes, or health insurance or home insurance, bad example today, but in general, those businesses where margin is everything, then AI, you have to lean into AI, because you've got to sort of strip all that stuff out. And so I think the sports business is a victim of its own success with respect to this, with this problem. And I think explaining to people who make their bones by narrowly selling access, when access all of a sudden doesn't really matter as much, it's like they have to actually shift their business model, and they have to be willing to take a chance. And I look at, this is the last thing I'll say and then I'll shut up. I would say I look at the decision Bob Iger made, whatever it was, 7 years ago, whenever the point was, to really fully invest in Disney Plus. Whereas like, they're making a ton of money in cable, they're doing all this other stuff, and it's like, I'm going to burn billions because I've got to move the model over here. And if you look at all the other traditional houses, everyone was like, let's just sit back and watch and see what Bob does. And then, oh, we have to do this too. And they sort of ran to it. AI is very unforgiving in that if you are not a first mover in the AI space and you don't actually invest in the infrastructure required to make AI effective, like, it's not like you're getting lapped. It's like these things are going 99.99999% of the speed of light speed. And so their distance goes to like nothing, as opposed to you having to do it. It's not something where you can like just catch up, which the sports leagues traditionally do. They wait, see how everything's playing, and then they step in. I think that's where a company like Radar can, move so much faster than everyone else.
As well said, Charlie. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to see, Sumit, if you want to pick on some stuff that was said, go for it. If you'd rather I prompt you with a question, I can do that as well. And then we'll go to Bashad.
No, I mean, I think, both the other guys nailed it, I think, in terms of perspective here on what it is and I think what the industry is looking at. The only thing I would say, just to build on Charlie's comments, is that there is a part that's very unique to sports and there's a part that's not. And I think, number one, we're here to lift trophies. We're here to connect the community. We're here to, to create incredible fan experience, guest experience when you're in our venues. So there is a very industry specific purpose that you're not going to find, I think, in other industries. But then there is an organization here as a business that has the same challenges and opportunities that other businesses have. And I think it's really important that as we talk about AI, I think the thing we got to think about is, let's go back and think 30 years ago and say, if we were having a conversation about how are you going to use the internet, right? We're not having a conversation about how to use the internet in 2025. And I think that faster than 30 years, we're going to have a conversation where AI is just underneath and a part of everything that we do, but in a good way. I think when I look at our business today, we are using AI in multiple ways that I think are invisible to fans, invisible to the work that our staff does, because we're making things easier every step of the way. So when we do guest surveys, for people that come to our building and we send out a survey, using AI to take and quickly tabulate all the comments that we have and identify key themes that we can act on to make that guest experience better the next night. We don't need to go and hit people overhead and say AI is doing that. We're just doing it because it's an easier and better way to deliver a better fan experience. And when we're looking at, workflow, Bashad was talking about, things like objects. We're not trying to identify cats or not cats, but we're using computer vision to make sure we can understand crowd flow. And our teams are using computer vision through, Hawkeye with the NBA and puck and player tracking, with the NHL, to name a couple of examples, where it's part of the work we do and it's intended to make things better and easier for the people that need to use it. And I think that's the fundamental way that we look at AI right now. We were joking about the hot topics in sports over the last few years. If you try to make it a hot topic and a super complex problem that nobody understands, you're going to take way too long to figure out how to do something with it. If you just get going and test and learn, break down barriers, make people that are really smart and talented in our organization and our industry, they're smart enough to tell you the problems that we want to solve and the opportunities that we have to deliver. The AI is a solution. It's not the thing to talk about. It's one of the ways that we're able to deliver improvement and make things better for us. But I think the less we talk about AI and the more we just think about how it can help us and to keep our focus on the problems and opportunities, we're more likely to be successful. And you're going to be able to look back in a year or two and say, we've been using AI a lot more impactfully than we thought we would, because it's just a natural part of the evolution of the business.
Bashad, I'm going to flip it to you. I want you to talk through a little bit about the two directions that we've seen for actual uses of AI within sports. And I'll let you explain what those two are. And then I want to flip it back to Sumit, because Sumit, you had some great concrete examples of how you guys as an organization are using it. So Bashad.
No, that's true. So, typically speaking, you see, the organization in the past couple of years, in particular with Gen AI, are using AI either for making internal operations more efficient, basically saving costs in a big picture. And there's a long range of examples, which I'll give some aspects of that. Or they use AI, the Gen AI, for building things which was not possible to be built before in terms of experiences and products, or new, which is bringing, in this case, in the case of these discussions, of course, new things for fans, which was not imaginable before. So let's talk a bit about the first one. And at Sportradar, we're heavily focused on both of these. On the first one, when it's about cost saving, you can range things from making your programmers to be more effective. The coding, the programming is becoming very different. Today, already, I would expect that majority of coders in the world are using AI. I cannot believe in 1 to 3 years from now, there is more than 1%, less than 1% of people in the code who are not using it, because it's just easier, faster. It's like if you decide to not use autocomplete, for example, in search, which of course everyone when you see that you type 1-2 queries and the rest of your programs is being written, why you won't use it. So ranging from things like that to having again chatbots to automated supports and so on. Computer vision, which Samit mentioned. So we have operations that typically is about data collections, looking at a sport game, let's say, and want to identify different types of events. Now, the more computer vision can do that automatically, the less of course the less human labors you would need to have that, and a human can just help sometimes to improve some aspects of the quality. Or you would have, let's say, take HR or legal and contract things. Sometimes you have to write these long contracts. They're all very similar. There's only some parts of it which is different. And if you can use AI and Gen AI, which you can very validly these days, to help writing it, to help finding some things inside that. So there's for all different types of ranges of use cases across different departments of any organization, but certainly also for any sport organization, which is going to be affected by saving costs. I cannot personally believe that there is any sizable company in the future which is not using Gen AI for saving costs. You have to, because there's a lot, and there's lots of examples of that around. You need to just copy it and so on. And then there's a second category, which is all about new experiences. What's possible to be done now, what before. Imagine that you can just generate automated commentary for all the games, with all the accents and all the languages, and because you like this particular player or team, the commentator will be much more, towards the things that you want. Imagine you can generate highlights, of all different lengths on all different formats, whether it's for mobile or desktop, TikTok and so on, all automated way, just in your fingertips, real time. Imagine you have a brain, a sport brain, which knows everything which happened in every game in the history, and in real time knows what's happening right now in the game, so that you can just ask, okay, what was that fall, or what happened exactly in that moment, so it can help you to consume and understand better the sport. So these are all these types of sport brains, or sport visual understanding, or sport new types of augmented experiences are all coming together again to build things which was not possible before. So we will be consuming sports in ways which is kind of personalized and unique to us. But it's also again, I think I repeat myself on this one, but these are things which was simply not possible 3-4 years ago, simply because of the fact that you can automatically, and thanks to this mega complex but smart brains go and build those things. And of course, there's a final aspect of AI, which is all about optimizations, which is kind of a traditional thing, but traditional aspects, but that matters a lot. You have some, we are obviously, supporting our betting industry, and then when they want to help them to optimize or minimize risk management and so on, of course, AI and machine learning models are playing a key role. This is like what banks are also doing. This is all like many other industries are also doing.
Sumit, Bashad mentioned two distinct use cases, right? And one I think falls neatly into what I would call, back of house operations efficiency, and the other maybe I'll call more forward-facing fan experience, bringing value. Do you have examples of within those two categories that you've actually used at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment?
I do, yeah. I would say though that as valuable the opportunity is for cost savings through AI, that can't be the reason you do something.
Okay.
I think any business that just tries to exist to take costs out is not going to be successful in the long run, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea is you take costs out where you might not need them, so you can invest where the opportunity is, to grow. And for us, we 100% focus on making sure that we do everything we can to help our teams win, and to help our fans have the best experience possible. And you earn the right to do more with them, over time. And that's how you build loyal fan bases, by caring about fans, right? So I think what we've tried to do is look at where are there areas that we can make life better for people that are there to serve our fans. One of the examples is that we have been able to develop an AI-based, content editing tool. And one of the things that's really difficult and time-consuming in sports is trying to retrieve, content, highlights from, as Bashad mentioned, historical footage. And if you ask somebody today to put together a highlight package of one of our players over the course of their career, that's 18 to 20 hours of work from just retrieving the content, looking for the tags, editing it, trying to get it into a highlight reel. That's a ton of work. And if you can turn that, what we've been able to do is turn hours of work down to minutes. And the result of that is, yes, you spend less time doing that work, which is great. But the more important thing is you can do more with that content more frequently. So now how can we turn that into something our fans can use? And can we get to a point where you can come into the Toronto Raptors app and build your own highlight reel with your favorite player? We're celebrating our 30th anniversary for the Raptors this year, and Vince Carter, getting to the Hall of Fame, having his jersey retired. We've got tons of fans that are sharing their moments of, Vince's career as fans, being able to curate your content and our content together in minutes as something that you can do to demonstrate engagement that we can, help foster and create. Now you're creating a differentiated experience. As Charlie was mentioning, it's not just about watch our games on whatever, network is airing the game. We're creating a differentiated experience that only we can deliver to you. And there's a value we're creating that you didn't have before. So that does two things at the same time. That takes some, there's some productivity savings for sure, but ultimately you're making things better and faster for our fans, and you're able to do more than you were able to before. And that's why I think all of this has to start with being strategy led. And at the end of the day, cost alone isn't going to be the reason you're going to win. It's got to create value for you, for your fans, for your teams, and for your stakeholders along the way.
Mm-hmm. We do have one question from the audience I want to get to there because it does relate to costs, perhaps in a somewhat controversial way. This question is from Chris Shreve. How do you combat the fear that internal and external stakeholders have around AI taking people's jobs? How can we more effectively communicate the value of AI in sports to overcome the various objections we face in the industry?
If I can jump in.
Yeah, Charlie, go ahead.
Sorry, can you guys still hear me, Mike?
Yeah.
Yes, we hear you.
You're good.
Sorry. It's funny because I took a note while Bashad was talking that I'll make a macro point that gets to Chris's question. Sports is the last great aggregator of audience. It's the last place where you can get 20, 30, 100 million people together to do something together at the same time as a group experience. And I think that when I say the leagues are behind, what I really mean is the leagues have the biggest opportunity for control because they do actually have this data lake that sits behind, that's proprietary, that they own. And if they own it, they can dole out the access to AI in a way that no one else can do it. Similarly, franchises do, as I was saying about with MLSE. And I think the point that Sumit made that I completely agree with around you can't be just financial efficiency. I look at we're currently in one of our league deals where we run operations for player health and safety and some of these other things. I think we did an audit with the league where we were saving something like 16,000 man hours a year in analysis of injuries and moving them to real time. So it wasn't a day later, it was during the match or the game where they could say this thing is happening. Nobody was fired in that process because it now meant that with that information, they could actually activate what needed to be activated based on that information. They just weren't wasting time, on operational side. Now, with that being said, I do think that the AI is going to replace us conversation is a dangerous conversation to have because on one side it is. I mean, there's no question that as the CEO of a business, I can't look at something and say it costs X to have a person doing this. It costs 1/20th of that to have a computer do majority of what that thing is and figure out how to do that. At the same time, I think that I think I said this on the call, and I realize there's all kinds of hair on me quoting Chamath in a conversation. So I'm bringing no opinion on Chamath to this other than to say I thought he had a great take on this, which was the people who invented refrigeration made some money, but Coca-Cola made a boatload of money because of refrigeration. And I think that what you're going to see with AI is I think the danger of AI in sports is that people think that they can do traditional business just, we're a little bit more efficient because of AI and stay there. The leagues will catch up. They have to. It's natural survival that they're going to have to do something. And I think one of the dangers is when you look at businesses that were first movers in AI, but were not in the league business. They were not in the infrastructure. They didn't have the relationships that, for example, Sportradar has that is uniquely in that. danger of being disintermediated in that process very quickly is real if you can't figure out what you are bringing that is actually practically valuable to what they're doing. And if you understand sports as the aggregator, the 30th anniversary of the Raptors being a great example, there are generations of people that have an experience that they want to have that are different. So the 50-year-old fan who was there at the beginning, or the 60-year-old fan who was there at the beginning, versus the 15-year-old fan who wasn't around for basically any of Vince Carter's experience, are having very, like, one of them wants to see Tracy McGrady stuff and the other one wants to see, a championship banner from a couple of years ago. Like, those are different conversations. AI can be useful in that if it does not break up the aggregation of all the fans, and all the fans are there for a Toronto Raptors experience that has been slightly personalized to them. As soon as you start to say everyone doing this, and obviously right now, again, hair on this as well, TikTok is the best example of this. Everyone shows up at TikTok and then they have a hyper-personal experience, but they experience as a TikTok experience. They don't credit it to the individual user. The experience is the flow that TikTok's providing them. Sports can uniquely do that. And I think people have to be thinking about how they activate that part of it and not try to do what has been the sports business model forever, which is narrowly verticalize businesses and be like, well, I own this corner. Like, the corners don't exist anymore. The road got straightened out and you've got to figure out how you're making it more efficient. You can't be like, I'm a blocker here because I've got some sort of thing. That you're going to get run over.
Yeah, I think it's a fair comment. If I can jump in, I think the comment just around the risk associated with this, you can't run a sports business without people. That's never going to change. We're a live event business. That's not going to change. To Charlie's point, we bring people together to celebrate, as one, and that's not going to change. So we're not going to stop doing what we do from a mission and a vision and values perspective. But at the same time, how we do it evolves over time. And we are doing it differently than we were doing it in 1995. And we were doing it differently than we were doing it in 1965. And that's unavoidable. So are there skills that are more valuable today that, were not needed, back then? For sure. Are there skills that we rely on today that we may not need as much of in the future? For sure. The opportunities here is not about, again, going back to, it's not about taking costs out or taking people out of the business. It's evolving your business and doing your best to make sure that we evolve at an individual level as much as at a macro level along the way. But we're in a different world. And if you look at every part of our business and zoom out, how people watch games is different today than even 5 years ago. With the OTT, services that are out there and the rights being distributed and fragmented, it's a different experience being a fan of a team today than it was, before the pandemic. In a lot of good ways, in some ways, we're still trying to bring back, right? But I think it's just the perspective here is the most important thing is if you start with your strategy, you make sure your values are clear in what you're doing, and you understand the trade-offs that you make every step of the way. The conversations we're going to have is not necessarily about can we, it's should we. And I think there's multiple areas of opportunity right now. We have done the analysis to say it's better to do it this way. AI is not ready to do that yet, right? And I think that's going to be an important part of the evolution as well, is it's not a universal, like, open door, let's go and do everything. We've got to be mindful and strategic. And I think there was a question in the chat earlier about how you get people there with you. To Charlie's point, we're not a siloed business. We are a finance department and a legal department and a marketing department. So we have to lean on our experts who are trying to solve business problems and help them identify the ways to do it versus dragging them into the future, by saying we've got the way and here's the way to do it.
So,
did you want to say something?
I think the fact that AI will displace some jobs is clear. It will certainly do it. It's already doing, and it will do much more of that. Whether this will, make more, job problems than before is very unclear, because any other big revolutions, technology revolutions like this, it always, over time, became actually better for the overall population. Internet being one of them, connectivity and so on, or mobile being another one, smartphones. So I think. There's this quote, not my quote necessarily, but I have been hearing it so many times, that it's, for any field that you consider, for example, AI is not going to replace doctors, but over time, doctors who use AI will replace doctors who don't use AI. And I think you can now easily replace doctor with pretty much any expert in any industry, and that happens. So I guess that I truly believe. Why and how should we communicate and effectively motivate to do that? If you don't do that, you're out of business. Really, that's simple, because all the competitions to Sumit's point, and which I really agree that it's really all about, all the new experiences, new expectations. Because when your competitors are providing experiences, or to Charlie's point, of all different, personalized or categories thanks to AI, for targeted experiences, and you're keeping, the experience in the old way, of course, slowly you will lose your fans and audience towards, those new norms, new expected experiences. So yes, for competition, one has to do that. I think generally you can actually use AI and do much more than what you're able to do today. So that's the good thing about it. But it's all about making new experiences and making things which was not done.
Does your product reduce friction either for you or for your consumer? AI is the joke, when the car arrived was, don't sell your horse. And it's like, sure, but try riding a horse down 85. Like, it's not, I mean, you can do it. You're just going to get run over by some dipshit in his Cybertruck. But at the end of the day, like, I think the thing that people, a lot of the concern around AI is, it's the Tony Robbins quote, like, it's not whether or not someone should get paid more for the job they're doing. It's a function of whether or not their job is something that could not be done by either someone else who's willing to do it for less, or something that's willing to do it with less friction. And so if you're reducing friction, it's flight. It's like the whole purpose of figuring out how to make a better airplane is, how do you reduce friction so the plane can move faster through the air? AI is doing that at an exponential rate, which means that you're going to get better airplanes, which means you're going to get better transport, et cetera, et cetera. I think that thinking about what it's going to do to the old model is a really dangerous way of thinking about it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chris, for the question. Another question from the audience. To the audience members, if you got questions, put them in here. Upvote the questions you see already. We've got one with 10 upvotes. Zachary Sullivan asks, with fans' attention spans dwindling, pushing the importance on real-time content, how does AI fit in with real-time content? Are there negatives to AI or automation in sports content impacting the storytelling side of things?
Can I say, this is one of the, and I won't give an AI answer, I'm just going to give a sports answer. This is a giant misnomer, in my opinion. If you look at time engagement with sports is the only one that isn't having the same, like, I only watch 15 seconds. The people who want to watch highlights are going to watch highlights. That's what I'm talking about. But I'm saying people who show up to watch the Super Bowl, et cetera, when you look at the actual time of people engaging with that event, it's actually not as reductive as people think. In a lot of cases, it's going up. If the content is interesting, right? They have more choices, but they're actually spending more time. Screen time is up, like, you guys can probably answer that, but screen time is up exponentially. People are spending more time in front of the screen. And sports is one of the few things that people actually have to stick around because it's live and you don't know what the outcome is. And so I actually think one of the mistakes people have been making, in my opinion, with sort of the first gen of AI in sports, is that they're trying to, like, make live more interesting. Like, we're making you see, AI is going to predict which defensive guy is going to come across the line, whatever the thing is. And my point is, how is that reducing friction for me as a viewer, or how is that making my experience better for what I'm interested in? Oh, well, I'm a gambler. I want to know more about it. Yeah, but I can't. Tech does not currently exist for me to make a bet in the 2.5 second window before the ball is snapped. So me knowing that thing isn't really making. Again, I think it's like we have this traditional business model over here that we're focused on. And so we're like, how do we solve that? Which I don't think is
Well, maybe to the second part of the question, are there negatives to the automation process of the storytelling of the live content? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree and I kind of disagree respectfully, I think, with Charlie on that. No biases here, but one of the things I look at is, again, I'm going to use history as an example because history repeats itself. When the first down marker started appearing on screens as an ever-present yellow line, are there people saying I don't need that on my screen, it's distracting, or did that become a way to make context of the game accessible and understandable to how you watch it, right? I think that the example you're talking about, we've got this great relationship with AWS. AWS has done a tremendous amount of work with hockey, with puck and player tracking information, and you can now see things like predicted face-off likelihood, and you're going to see this for the Four Nations Cup that's happening who's likely to win that face-off in a moment, even if you're not betting on sports, in that moment, there's a little bit of extra context for people that want it, that they can get it. For people that are new to the game, to understand how important a face-off is in the context of a hockey game, you're creating new ways for people to enter and learn a sport and enjoy it as well. So does it have to be for everybody? Not at all. But that's one of the benefits, I think, is going back to the heart of the question. The benefits of being able to bring AI in is you can bring more personalization. We can watch shows on Netflix in any language we want now, and we can watch it with subtitles, or we can have voiceover. It's personalized choices for us, and how they, produce the content and deliver it to me is different than it is for Dan, and there's no cost to the users, the consumers in that way. So I don't think we've cracked the code by any means, but I think the opportunity and ambition to keep trying to find ways to personalize fan experience and grow our fan base by doing these things, it's too good to pass up, right? Mm-hmm. I think, are there negatives? For sure. But I think that's where it goes back to the can we and should we. If I'm going to do, there's tremendous, technology out there with translation in real time. If we're going to translate something, that's great. But from an ethical and a code of conduct perspective, can we make sure it's very clear when you're communicating something that's been auto-translated and it's not the speaker's, native language or the native content that was captured? That's just responsible use stuff, right? So I think we're still really early, but we have to be ambitious. We have to test and learn, and we have to do this with the right intentions. And, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I think we're going to get some things wrong, and that's okay. But I think as long as we've got a clear strategy of how we want to do it, I'm actually very excited about how fans are going to be able to enjoy sports through AI in the future. I think we're just scratching the surface here, and the best is yet to come.
I think the danger. Sorry, Bashad, go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah, 2 points maybe I would say. One is it is actually true that for the different generations, so that you take Gen Alpha, they actually watch much less live, or Gen Z, they watch much less live games as previous generations. So, and because they're just their span of attention is much more towards the pre-game and post-game, all types of content. So there's a lot. The content is not always only about the live moment of the games, but it's also, and AI plays a big role in both of those. It is true that sports is, and in my opinion, will remain forever in the future, the number one gatherer of people. Live. I think something like the 99 out of the 100 top live event is all sport events. So that will stay like that. No question on that. And I think the AI, doing too much of AI or not putting product first, can actually indeed, in my opinion, destroy the storytelling aspect of the things. Just imagine that you're going on the screen and you're watching the game, and there's so many different numbers and AI generated insights or visuals, and then you just don't feel this is like, at least as of today, I would not feel. I don't know whether the next generations will feel differently or not. But so it's very important to use AI very targeted way. Is it an advanced user? Is it an average user? Is it a beginner user? Is it a gambler, better user, and so on? So it's and if you just say that I enhance this experience with much more AI experiences, you actually can, in my opinion, to what question is asking, to impact negatively the storytelling or the fan experience. So it's always, to what one of you said previously, always focus on what value you're bringing to the user, what friction, how is this better than before, how is this, easier than before. Sorry, Charlie, you wanted to say something?
No, I'm really glad you said it, because I want to point something out. The percentage of the population of Gen Alpha that watches sports is lower, but the people who engage with live sports watch longer, which is a really important nuance within sports, because what we're seeing, if you look at the Super Bowl, is the tuned in audience watched more consecutive minutes of the Super Bowl while they were watching it than have in the past, which to me is a really important distinction here, because what we're doing, going to Sumit's point about the first down line in football, David Hill, who I would credit with being the executive who said we should put the first down line, and I sat in the room and my dad was like, there's no way in hell NBC is going to do that because blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, everyone does it. David Hill did that. And then what a lot of people sort of either laugh off or ignore was the glow puck for the NHL. Yeah. And they ultimately got beaten down because traditionalists in the NHL were like, oh, no, our traditional fans don't like this. But when you actually look at the research 25 years later, that had the highest spike in people tuning in that did not previously watch hockey. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that happens with technology is that there's groupthink around the use case. So I'm not the AWS technology, as an example, they're a partner of ours, is like what they're doing behind the scenes to do that is incredible. It's amazing. My point is the thing that I find more interesting is that you have these different broadcasts of the same thing within which you can sort of opt in, but who are you trying to get to opt in? The beauty of the glow puck, to me, the genius of the glow puck was I am not traditionally a hockey watcher, but I could actually follow what was going on, particularly pre-HD. Like, it actually enhanced the experience for me to watch it. They lack the technology to be able to say to the traditional fan, you don't have to watch this. You can go over here and watch this other thing. What I'm trying to get at is I think that one of the places I go blue in the face in all of these debates about sports is there are traditional groupthink things that people bring to the conversation where they're like, this is popular. College basketball, as an example. It's like college basketball is a popular business. And I'm like, if you took the top 25 college basketball games, including the national championship, and smashed them together, it would not equal the rating of a preseason NFL game in terms of actual audience, which is not to say that audience of college basketball isn't hyper valuable. They are when you look at like their unit economics on the individual user, they're a much more engaged user. That's great. But what I think the mistake is that we apply this sort of like traditional thought of like, this is how this works. And I think that what we need to see from outside thinkers is a recognition of the power of AI to deliver an audience and then an experience to that audience that is net new to the already aggregated audience of the team, the league, the franchise, the whatever. And I'm talking about from the content perspective. One thing we talked about in our pre-call, and Sumit, maybe you can speak to this for a second, is the ability to just take traditional work internally and say, like, dump all that data in and then step back and say, hey, we're doing a new deal. What does this all look like over here? And instantaneously understand the parameters you've lived within is the other aspect of this that we're like sort of blasting past that ultimately I think in the short term has the most upside value for sport. Because if you think about the sheer amount of time where we're redoing the same garbage over and over and over again, which that inertia is why you don't see innovation. Because we're just like spending all our time doing the same bull, then the opposite is where I see the immediate upside is the long-term upside.
I think it's a great point. And I think going back to, I think some of the audience questions here, if there's people here that are trying to understand, how do I get started? You know, it's my analogy is like, this is like chess. Chess is an easy game to learn, but difficult to master, but it shouldn't stop you from playing, right? And I think that we have to just play. There are workflow productivity tools that exist today. Chances are everybody in your organization's tried ChatGPT in some way or form. So, you know, the answer is really, to your point, Charlie, what are the areas that you can make life better right now? And, you know, some of those examples are like, we've taken contracts, we've taken documents, league operations manuals, collective bargaining agreements. Let's put that information in an internal, private, secure model and say, how do we access that information and intelligently trigger actions as a result of having that information more accessible and being able to prompt, you know, behavior and actions and flags and cautions in a way that it would take some of our team, you know, weeks to go through because of a bottleneck, right? So those are just everyday examples that are quick wins. Then you get into more of the sophisticated, you know, deep engineering and sophisticated technology, which we're super proud of, but those bigger, fewer, you know, moments where you want to really go all in on something and say, we're going to transform, you got to get there. But it shouldn't be a choice. I think, you know, for me, there's a bit of an all of the above approach that you want to take, small, medium, and large, that you're mindful of your resources, but you have to get some internal momentum. And I think the most important thing we can do in talking about getting an organization comfortable with AI is making it accessible to people to understand it's not this big, intimidating thing that only a select few experts are going to be able to understand. Democratize access, teach people how to use it responsibly, find the use cases, and then just, you know, take a couple of bites out of the apple and see what you can do with it.
Guys, this is great. We're getting close to time. I want to make sure that we get to one more question. I want to acknowledge the questions from the audience that we're not going to get to. A few of them are related to sponsorship or digital content, and that's episode 2 and 3 of this 3-part series. So make sure you register for episode 2 and 3, and we'll get to those because we can't cover it all in this one episode. I want to plug really quickly that there's plenty more AI content from Sports Business Journal at our Tech Week, which is March 4th through 6th in New York City. We'll drop a link in the chat where you can register for Tech Week. I hope you're there. We have a full afternoon devoted to artificial intelligence, and the Sports Business Awards Tech has an artificial intelligence category. And Sumit, are you nominated? Is MLSE nominated somewhere there? I think they may be. So please make sure that you attend Tech Week and you attend part 2 and 3 of this 3-part series. There's a question in the chat, and it's great. It's from Georgia Sapunis, who says something that I was going to ask everyone, but I'll use her phrasing. Where are you investing AI resources, both tech and people, that is driving the biggest impact today? Please give specific examples. Sumit, can I start with you?
Definitely in our content and creative workflow. I think so. We're investing the resources we have to focus on use cases. We've been, again, successful with video editing. I think we're talking about how we can scale that, productize it, make it more user friendly. Tremendous collaboration again with the AWS, with 12 Labs. There's a ton of value there just in the workflow around content and creative services. I think the other area that we're really interested in right now is I think the whole agentic space, because one of the things we got to think about is how are we using dashboards today, and the big data evolution I think over the last 10 years is also starting to kind of mature. So do we need dashboards for every different part of our business, or should we be thinking about more of an agentic interaction that says, tell me how I did last night and how does that compare to the last 10 games, or what are the flags that identify risks that are emerging as trends we should keep an eye on? These are human questions, and instead of trying to take human behavior and translate it into the right question or in the right visualization, how do we take advantage of the technology that we have right now and the capabilities of our team and build things that make work easier to make better decisions? So I think those are two super exciting, areas that I think are going to be a game changer for us. But one of our things we're going through right now is we're going through a bit of a strategy exercise and a prioritization. It's about what are the most impactful opportunities that we can help our teams, help our fans, help our business. And at the end of the day, you got to, pick your battles and focus where you can.
Thank you, Sumit. Charlie.
I think so much was nailed in that answer that what I would say is we, particularly in player health and safety, our ability to sort of just get to real-time solutions is there. I want to make just a sidebar point, because I've been watching the chat and it seems that the overwhelming majority of the people on this call are startups that are in the sports business, et cetera. And I want to make one dangerous prediction, but maybe useful to this group of people, which is this. I believe there is going to be a run over the next 18 months of companies, the Apples, Googles, Amazons of the world, et cetera, and also some of the sports leagues, that are going to need to jump the line on the ability to do certain technologies. And a lot of the people that came in with AI, the companies that came maybe 4 or 5 years ago that were doing predictive video editing and clipping and all this other stuff, they raised at insane valuations between 2020 and 2022. And so their exit path is like, it has to be at $1 billion. And none of the FANG or whatever, MAGA, whatever we're calling them, Meta, Apple, Google, Amazon, Triumvirate, whatever that company is called, that conglomeration, those companies are not in the $1 billion business. Apple's only ever bought one company for over $1 billion in their entire history, but they buy 20, 40, and $50 million companies a year. If you can figure out a way to deliver your technology and prove it in a very narrow use case where they can see how they can expand it, getting your company bought for $25, $30, $35 million right now because you haven't taken huge valuations and you haven't done that, I think there's going to be an opportunity unique to this moment where that type of you're going to see a lot of that acquisition activity. And so my biggest piece of advice to people on this call thinking about AI is find your niche that is very unique and useful to a MLSE or a Radar or whatever, and have a exit strategy that is capped. And I think you can move your business and you can get inside of a system that really works, unlike any other time in history.
Thank you, Charlie. Bashad, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, first, comment on what just Charlie said, please. Startups on the call, we're very excited and happy to hear what you're building. So,
yeah.
If you want to talk to us, please reach out directly to myself.
Call us first.
Secondly, in terms of where we're using our AI investments, I think as we mentioned before, I think one part is, it's about all of the real value creation. So we have all these new experiences, such as our foresight experience, which is similar to what Charlie explained before, overlaying insights at the right time, at the right place, and, to NBA, ATP, all the types of, great partnerships that we have with the top sports out there. So that's one category of things into, the experiences such as alpha for optimizing, odds and risk management. This is bringing big value to our customers. There's computer vision, which is about, really collecting data and basically all the products which is happening afterwards of that. But we're also investing some of our resources these days on building, what we call it internal to Sportradar as ultimate sport brain. What is that, that box that, can answer any types of questions, and you can build, build the sport experiences real time or non-real time, which was not possible to be built before. So that's, again, to what we said earlier in the talk, the data that we have, which sometimes goes from 120 years old of, of baseball data on MLB to the 60 times per second and 29 points of body of every basketball player. So it's the range of the real-time data and how deep it is and how how breadth it is makes it possible for us to really go and attack on how can we aggregate all these types of data and enable new types of experiences. And of course while Sumit mentioned a few times, not only about saving cost and efficiency, I think we are doing certainly some of that, and every company should do that, but not only that. And certainly we should, we're very much looking into participating in building the future of how fans are experiencing sports.
Thank you, Bashad. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Sumit. Thank you to Sportradar for the support. To the audience, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I hope to see you all virtually at part 2 and part 3 of this, and in person in New York at Tech Week, March 4th through the 6th. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.